From the first shelters to modern constructions, human beings have always found creative ways to protect themselves and express their identity through architecture. However, in some cases, that creativity goes so far that it gives rise to houses completely out of the ordinary, which can be defined as true habitable works of art that challenge the eye and the imagination. And it is with that in mind that we have gathered a list with some of them to present in today's video. So stay tuned there and get ready to discover some of the strangest, most curious, and most unusual houses that exist in our world. Upside down house. Imagine walking into a house where the ceiling is on the floor and the furniture hangs above your head. Sounds pretty strange, doesn't it? But that is exactly the experience you get when visiting the upside-down house located in the village of Szymbark in Poland, which was built in 2007 by philanthropist and businessman Daniel Czapiewski, and which features the unusual characteristic of being completely turned upside down. Today, thousands of visitors walk into the house every year, and many even report feeling dizzy or disoriented while walking inside. After all, it's easy to imagine that a place like this must create a really confusing sense of perspective. Giant shell. Designed in 2006 by Mexican architect Javier Senosiain, this is the Shell House, also known as the Nautilus House, one of the most remarkable examples of what its creator calls organic architecture, a style that seeks to harmoniously integrate humans with nature. Located in Naucalpan, Mexico, this distinctive house, inspired by the shape of a seashell, features fluid curves and colorful stained glass windows that filter the light as if the interior were underwater. It was built using a technique called ferrocement, which employs a metal framework covered with cement and allows curved surfaces to be shaped with almost total freedom. And it was originally created for a couple with children who wanted to live in a different kind of space, in constant contact with nature. Over time, the house became a global icon of experimental architecture, and today it is one of the most photographed residences in the world, attracting curious visitors, students, and professionals from all over. Stone Refuge. At the top of the hills of Faith in Portugal, there is a house that seems to have been born naturally among the huge rocks that dominate the landscape. That's because this incredible house you're seeing now, built in the 1970s, was fitted between 4 giant stone blocks, as if nature itself had decided to shelter someone inside it. The idea came from a family looking for a simple retreat in the countryside, and ended up creating a true masterpiece of rustic architecture, which over time gained worldwide fame and came to be compared to the Flintstones house from the famous cartoon. Today, it functions as a small museum, preserving original furniture and objects, and attracting visitors who are amazed by this rare and perfect blend between nature and human ingenuity. Unlikely home. Seeing everything upside down, living inside a shell, or being surrounded by giant rocks. All of these are examples of homes that are far from ordinary. But have you ever wondered what it would be like to live inside a dumpster? Well, British artist Harrison Marshall did, and amid the housing crisis in London, he found a solution as creative as it was unusual, turning a construction skip into a functional home. This small space, measuring about 2.5 meters wide, included a bed, compact kitchen, electricity, and even Wi-Fi connection, and was designed by Marshall as a direct critique of the high cost of housing in the British capital, where he lived for several months, not only to demonstrate that, with creativity and awareness, it's possible to rethink the concept of a home, but also to draw attention to the absurdity of rental prices in major cities. Narrow house. Well, I have to admit that just thinking about living in the tiny space of a dumpster was enough to trigger my claustrophobia. So now let's talk about a normally sized house. Or maybe not quite. That's because from a certain angle, this house doesn't look any different from the others in the neighborhood. But that's only at first glance. Built in Le Havre, France, this is the Narrow House, one of the most peculiar constructions ever displayed in public spaces. And it was created by Austrian artist Erwin Wurm, who decided to recreate his parents' house but shrink it down to an absurd scale, with flattened furniture, narrow doors, and proportions that distort perception, in an attempt to spark reflection on the limits of modern life, consumerism, and the pressure of living in increasingly smaller spaces in large cities. Plastic home. While tons of plastic are discarded every day and end up polluting the planet, a woman from the town of El Tránsito in El Salvador decided to give that material a completely different purpose. After losing her home in an earthquake in 2001, Salvadoran woman Maria Ponce decided to rebuild her own house using PET bottles. With no money and no government assistance, she began collecting hundreds of PET bottles of different sizes and colors, discarded on the streets and beaches of her small village, which were carefully cleaned and aligned with bamboo rods to form the walls and part of the roof of the house, while the floor was covered with thousands of bottle caps, creating a colorful handmade mosaic. Unfortunately, Maria Ponce passed away in 2024 at the age of 90, but until the end of her life, she continued living there, receiving visitors every day, and personally maintaining the house for about 2 decades, even after an incident involving a vehicle in 2021 that caused part of it to be rebuilt. Impossible curves. Anyone walking through the streets of Sopot in Poland might feel as if they were inside a dream or an illusion, and that's because among the many ordinary buildings of the city, there stands a structure that seems to melt before your eyes. We're talking about the Krzywy Domek, which in Polish means crooked house. Opened in 2004, it is part of a commercial complex that houses shops, restaurants, and cafes, and it was created by architects inspired by the illustrations of Jan Marcin Sancher and Per Oskar Gustav Dahlberg, artists known for their distorted and fantastical worlds, which seems to have been quite an inspiration indeed, as its exterior truly stands out for its surreal appearance, as if it had come straight out of a cartoon, with an uneven roof, wavy walls, and slanted windows. Flying bus. If you, like me, are a fan of zombie movies, you've probably imagined what the perfect refuge would look like to live in isolation and fight off the undead. Well, it seems I've just found the perfect place for that. A high spot, with a great view of the surroundings and, most importantly, a really awesome look. It's the School Bus Deer Stand, located in the rural area of Springbrook, in the state of Wisconsin, in the United States, and it consists of nothing more and nothing less than a school bus placed on top of a metal column and transformed by local resident Jesse Kaufman into a hunting lookout that, inside, has most of the things you'd expect to find in a regular house. The idea came as a practical and at the same time eccentric way to create an elevated observation point for deer hunting, something common in the region. And those factors I mentioned, being high and offering a clear view, really make sense. To get the bus up to the top of the structure, Jesse used a temporary dirt ramp that was later replaced by a metal staircase, which today is what leads to the top of this fantastic structure for fighting zombies. Deer hunting. Impossible architecture. In Japan, the tea ceremony is a symbol of calm, balance, and simplicity. However, architect Terunobu Fujimori seems to have decided to take that tradition to another level by creating the Flying Mud Boat, a fantastic tea house suspended by steel cables attached to 4 wooden posts. Located in Nagano Prefecture in Japan, this tiny house, which was built in 2010 using traditional techniques, has a structure made of natural materials such as wood and clay, and a unique and fascinating shape that resembles a boat or a walnut. Access to the interior of the house is made by a staircase, and inside, the space is small and simple, designed to host only a few people during the tea ceremony, with curved wooden walls and circular windows that allow light to enter and create a perfect harmony with the surrounding nature. Transparent house. Designed by Japanese architect So Fujimoto in 2011 in a residential neighborhood of Tokyo, Japan. This is one of the most astonishing urban residences in the world and is popularly known as the transparent house, precisely because its main concept is total transparency, with walls and partitions made almost entirely of glass. Inspired by the idea of living in a tree and the way people occupy different levels of a trunk, the house is composed of 21 small interconnected platforms, each used for a different function such as sleeping, reading, cooking, or working. And because it lacks conventional walls and privacy in the traditional sense, anyone passing by on the street can easily observe its entire interior and literally see whatever anyone living inside is doing at that moment. So, what do you think? Would you dare to live in such an exposed house? The Steel House. Now let's talk about the Steel House, a unique work located in Ransom Canyon, Texas, designed by American sculptor Robert Bruno, who began the project in 1973 and over about 35 years worked almost entirely alone, welding and shaping steel plates by hand without a team or formal contract. However, the structure was never completed during Robert's lifetime. He preferred to see the work as a continuous process, and for that reason, by the time of his death in 2008, the house still had unfinished interior sections and open structures between levels. After Robert's death, the house remained closed for years, with occasional guided tours, and in 2021, the property was finally acquired by new owners who carried out interior renovations to make it habitable and began offering overnight stays. Fun at home. Imagine opening the door of a house and coming face to face with a slide that runs through the entire place. It sounds like something straight out of a childhood dream, doesn't it? But it's real. This is the Slide House, located in Tokyo, Japan, and it was designed by the Japanese architecture firm Level Architects for a family with small children, with the goal of creating a unique residence that combines modern architecture with childhood fun. And apparently, the idea really worked, because on one side of the house, from the 3rd floor down to the ground floor, it has stairs like a normal house, but on the other side, it features a winding slide that runs through the entire interior, creating a unique experience of movement and lightness by allowing the residents, especially the children, to go from one floor to another by sliding. Crocodile House. Well, we have to admit that so far we've talked about some truly strange and surprising houses, from unusually shaped homes to ones of remarkably small size. But now it's time to talk about a house unlike any other we've seen so far, and one that stands out for having the shape of an animal, or more specifically, a crocodile. Designed and built in the city of Abidjan in Ivory Coast, this unique house has the full shape of a massive crocodile sculpted in concrete, with detailed scales, teeth, and eyes, and enough space to house a family inside, which led the project to enter the Guinness Book in 2008 as the world's first crocodile-shaped house, and also made it a popular tourist attraction and an architectural landmark in the city of Abidjan. Habitable airplane. In the middle of a forest in Oregon, United States, there is an airplane that looks like it made an emergency landing. But in reality, it's not an abandoned plane that crashed there. It's the home of engineer Bruce Campbell, who decided to buy a decommissioned Boeing 727 and, with patience and ingenuity, turned it into a fully functional house. Bruce bought the retired plane from Olympic Airways in 1999, which was dismantled and transported to his property, where he carefully reconstructed the aircraft and spent years adapting its interior to live inside it. Bruce believes that airplanes are perfect homes, strong, safe, and time-resistant, and advocates the idea of reusing retired aircraft as sustainable housing, just like his, which currently serves as a complete residence with a kitchen, bathroom, workspace, and even original cabin lighting. Giant dog. And if we had a house shaped like a crocodile on this list, of course we couldn't miss one shaped like man's best friend. Located in Idaho, in the United States, this is the Dog Bark Park Inn, a small hotel that became world famous for its unusual shape of a giant beagle dog. Built by artists Dennis Sullivan and Francis Conklin, the building was inaugurated in August 2003 and functions both as an inn and as a local tourist attraction, with the interior of the structure following the same theme, with dog-inspired decorations, wooden sculptures, and handmade crafts created by the artists themselves. Monumental toilet. Now let's talk about another rather unusual house that catches the attention of anyone passing by, due to its unconventional design in the shape of a giant toilet. Located in Suwon, South Korea, the HABITABLE is a structure conceived by South Korean politician and activist Sim Jae-duk, who dedicated part of his life to the cause of basic sanitation and public hygiene awareness. For him, the bathroom was not just a functional space, but a symbol of dignity and health, and to reinforce that message, he decided to build his own house inspired by this theme, a combination of art, architecture, and activism. Completed in 2007, the house has 2 floors, rounded balconies, and an opening in the roof that resembles a toilet seat. And after Sim Jae-duk's death, the place was turned into an educational and interactive museum that presents exhibitions on the history of toilets and on the importance of access to basic sanitation around the world. House over the water. Built over a natural waterfall in the middle of a forest in Pennsylvania, in the United States, this fantastic house you're seeing now, known worldwide as Falling Water, is one of the most famous works of architect Frank Lloyd Wright and was designed in 1935 for businessman Edgar Kaufman. The house is a perfect example of the concept of organic architecture, an ideal championed by Wright, who sought to completely integrate the building with its natural surroundings. With its horizontal forms, suspended terraces, and the constant sound of water flowing beneath the floor, Falling Water seems to float above the landscape, and it is now considered a landmark of 20th century architecture, open to the public as a museum and recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. Tower of Dreams. Designed and built by lawyer and engineer Philip Widener in Alaska, this is the Goose Creek Tower, one of the most unusual residential constructions in the world, made up of several stacked wooden cabins that together reach over 55 meters in height. The tower began construction in the late 1990s, and each floor was added manually, with Widener himself designing and overseeing the entire project. The tower blends elements of rustic and experimental architecture, with asymmetrical windows and an internal wooden staircase connecting each module, and according to Widener, his original goal was to create a place where it would be possible to see to the end of the world. And indeed, the top of the structure truly provides a vast and far-reaching view, since on clear days, it's possible to see Mount McKinley, which is simply the highest point in North America. Inside the shoe. In the province of Mpumalanga in South Africa, there is a house that looks like something straight out of a children's story, a gigantic shoe house, which is part of a tourist and artistic complex built by artist Ron Van Zyl and his family. Inside the house, there are bedrooms, a small gallery, and even religious sculptures carved by Van Zyl, who is known for blending art, spirituality, and architecture in his creations. However, despite standing out for its unusual appearance, the idea of a house shaped like a giant shoe is not entirely new, because the concept had already been explored decades earlier in the United States with the Haynes Shoe House, built in 1948 by Marlon Haynes, a footwear businessman from Pennsylvania, who decided to carry out this unique and ambitious project to promote his shoe brand. Crazy House. And finally, let's talk about the Crazy House, one of the most eccentric constructions in the city of Dalat in Vietnam, and whose name alone already gives us an idea of what's coming next. Designed by architect Giang Viet Nga, who stated that her inspiration came from nature and childhood imagination, the house began construction in 1990 and has since become a world-famous tourist attraction. The building follows an expressionist style, completely breaking away from straight and traditional lines, and each room has a different theme, with shapes that resemble tree roots, caves, and animals, for example, and the place currently functions as a guest house and art gallery, open to the public, receiving thousands of visitors every year. But what do you think? Which house did you find the most surprising and fantastic on this list? Leave it in the comments and tell us which one impressed you the most. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content we bring here. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.